Magdalena, it's thank you so
Thank
much. Yeah.
you, Milana. Yes, this is indeed a very special event because we have our dear Milana actually performing. So this is yet another hat that she is putting on for this event, between the organizing, the fundraising, community making, the school outreach. I just read the very exciting news about Konstantin Sokowiecki joining the educational initiative. Then she's also sitting at the piano, and not only that, but actually rehearsing a chamber music piece that requires not only individual practice, but also preparation with all the other players. So really, our kudos goes to you, Milana. We are all a fan club here. So, but let's start from we'll keep the Franck quintet for the last, because I will also have a few questions to you about how you've been preparing for it amidst everything that is going on. I'd like to start with just simply the notion of chamber music and how this is something that was really born out of a need of kind of people making music together outside of the church settings. And I will in fact share my screen already so you can see this lovely painting here of people making music, chamber music together. So amateurs often, nobility and educated people who studied an instrument were able to get together and just sort of read through stuff. These were not, professional level performances. Some of them might have actually sounded pretty bad, if you can imagine. But what was really lovely was the fact that one could. We're talking now about the 18th century. One could rent sheet music for a piece and have it for a week. And then kind of get it back. So this was sort of a new idea. And as you can see here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, there's a whole pile of scores, which these gentlemen here are playing through. There's probably some wine around, and as you see their guests, there seems to even be a little kid listening, and people either entering or just simply trying to listen in on what's going on in the room. So this sort of idea of making music together as a pastime was incredibly popular. Another thing that was popular in the 18th century and really blossomed in the second half of the Age of Enlightenment was the public concerts. So as I mentioned in some of my previous talks, when you wanted to hear music, you could either go to church or be in the circles of an aristocrat in order to attend some of their events. Well, public concerts really expanded that idea, where people could simply just buy a ticket and attend an event of their choosing. And that really affected the way composers wrote their music. We will talk today about sonata form, and I want to show to you just this maybe somewhat abstract looking graph, and we will talk about it in a second. This is sonata allegro form, was something was provided as kind of a template for composers to write music quickly and easily, and in a way that was legible to a larger audience. So people would know that they are going to hear certain material a certain amount of times, and we all love what we know. And the sonata form really exploded in its popularity. And as you will learn today, composers well into the 20th century wrote in sonata forms to sort of include the audience in the story. Let me start with a Mozart quartet. You're going to hear the Callisto Quartet perform one of the famous Mozart quartets that is also nicknamed a Haydn quartet, because it belongs to a group of quartets that was dedicated to Joseph Haydn, an older composer who was friends with Mozart. Before I do that, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Amadeus, the Milos Forman film from the 80s, but here is a scene that really that my memory went to when I was thinking about what to share with you for today's pre-concert talk. And here is the scene. Doesn't even feature Mozart. It is Salieri, his frenemy, and his confessor. And let's just listen to this moment.
Yeah. What about this one? Yes, I know that. Oh, that's charming. I'm sorry, I didn't know you wrote that. I didn't. That was Mozart.
And here we go. So the reason that this scene was something that made me think of today is that this delightful tune that we have all heard somewhere. Yes, of course, it is charming and delightful, as the priest said. It's a great tune. It's very catchy. And this is something that you won't find in this quartet in E flat major. It seems that Mozart has taken a task here to write a masterpiece that doesn't contain one good tune that you can hold on to. And so let me show you what I mean. By the way, could you hear the audio okay? Was everything fine today? Oh, thank goodness. All right. So here we come back to sharing the screen, and I want to play the beginning. Oh, here, by the way, before I start, here is a portrait, a family portrait of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, his sister Nan Earl. As you can see here, they are making chamber music, in this case with their father Leopold, who was also a prominent musician and the author of a treatise on playing the violin. Posthumously included is their mother, who died suddenly. By the way, Wolfgang came from a family of 7 children, but only the 2, he and Nan Earl, survived to adulthood. We know that Nan Earl was often taken on tour by Daddy Leopold, who was very much of a stage father. At some point, she began to be left behind so that Wolfie could, make a name for himself. And anyway, it wasn't appropriate for a young lady like Nan Earl to become a professional musician. But here, I'm sharing this portrait just so that you get an idea of the chamber music making and that went on in their household, probably on regular basis. And here is the beginning of the Mozart String Quartet. I want you to listen to how there is really no tune to hold on to. We are in monophony, so you're going to hear only one line without any accompaniment. And if you were to hum it, it would sound very, very bizarre. By the way, here is Mozart with the master himself, Joseph Haydn, to whom this quartet was dedicated. Here's the opening. Okay, there is really nothing much to speak of. Where is the harmony, right? We have 4 voices, the first violin, second violin, viola, and the cello. That's always going to be the composition of the string quartet, which very much follows the kind of the vocal structure of soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. You will notice, even without reading musical notation, that the 2 violins are not playing the same material, right? So they're going to sort of stand in for the soprano and alto in a vocal texture. Again, let's hear that melody, really weird. Another thing that you're going to notice a lot of, and this is something that later shows up in Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, which is that knocking motif. Right here. So there's a lot of those four-note knocking motifs. I think you're going to have a lot of fun listening for them and trying to spot which instrument is actually playing them. Well, let's listen to what this thing develops into. So here we have finally that very bizarre melody with some sort of a harmonic background. So we at least know the key that we're beginning in. And so we're in E flat major. Now, as any good sonata form does, and I will show you now this graph. So we are here in the first theme. We did not have the optional introduction. And here we are in the first theme, which establishes the home key. Now we're going to start modulating. So changing the key to a kind of a new area, which is then confirmed with a second tune, second theme. Okay, and it's very, very similar to an arc of a story, right? And so below here, you actually see that the conflict is built together with that modulation that leads to the second theme. So let's see how Mozart goes about that. So now technically, we should find ourselves in this new key and hear the second theme, which has a new character. It's supposed to be more gentle and so on. But instead, Mozart keeps us wondering. He inserts two other keys in there that really deny us that stability of being in the new key. So the audience may have been slightly perplexed by this. He is still sticking to the form, but in many ways he is so modernist about his approach, really, molding the sonata form to what he needs from it, not what the audience is expecting. So let's enjoy that lack of stability. Sometimes we feel uncomfortable listening to music and we don't really realize why, but here Mozart knows exactly what he's doing. He's like, I'm not going to make it easy on you. Do you hear that knocking motif? It's going to be there throughout. Here we get to that moment whenever you hear a nice long trill, it's a nice cadence confirming the key. So he says, yes, I knew all along what I was doing here. Don't think that I got lost in the form, says Mozart. Now, we hear yet another melody, which gives us this knocking theme here in a slower rhythm. So just listen to it. That's something that I hope that you enjoy a lot. Also, the different melodies, the different themes being passed around between the instruments. As a Grand Piano Series patrons, you guys hear a lot of piano solo music. Here you will have the pleasure of seeing the tune being passed from one instrument to another. In this case, it was the viola that took over. So keep your eyes and ears open because it's a lot of fun actually trying to follow that. Now, the so-called exposition, which is what you heard just now, including the first and second theme, is going to get repeated. Now, why do these things get repeated? It is exactly for the audience to be able to internalize the material and sort of make better sense of it. Again, these are audiences who do not have streaming services at home. They are not going to be hearing this piece again. It's very unlikely. So that's really their only chance to absorb the piece. Now, going back to my slide with the form, and don't worry, this is, you don't have to become musicologists today, but I just want to show you how many composers have made use of that template to write music that's so different. And, we always have to remember that for every Mozart, there will be 1,000 Salieris or even more mediocre composers who tried to write in that same scheme, maybe less successfully. So in the development section, you're going to hear much more stormy music, atmosphere. You will hear parts of the first theme, maybe the second, reappearing and modulating, meaning changing keys. And all that is then leading to a retransition and sort of resolving of that conflict in the recapitulation. So when you are back hearing what you heard at the beginning, that means we are back home. But as I said, Mozart is definitely not making this task easy on us. And so just when you think, okay, well, first movement was tough, I'm sure things will be much more smooth in the second. Well, not exactly. Let me just find my 1040. The second movement, Andante con moto, is also devoid of a tune. So when I first listened to this recording, which I will play for you now, I thought, well, is this performance really what it should be? Is it expressive enough? But then I realized, oh, these players, they're realizing something about Mozart, which is that he is avoiding these soaring melodies. Goodness knows that he, as a composer of some of the most popular operas still today, knew how to write a good tune. Well, this time he decided to keep it from us. So just listen to how little there is to actually hum in that second movement, and therefore the very understated, subdued performance of it. So I wonder how the Callisto Quartet is going to approach this challenge. There is really none of that soaring lyricism that you normally find in an aria of Mozart. Even his piano concertos have these stunning melodic lines. And here you have 4 string instruments capable of that singing, of molding the melodies, creating soaring lines, and Mozart is really hiding it from us. Again, I think it's really ahead of his time, shocking the audience this way. Now, moving right along to the minuet, just see if I can find, yes, I can find it maybe or not without, no, I have to go back, I'm sorry, to the timing that I had noted down, 24:51. Well, if there is an animal that comes to mind when you hear this tune, I think you'll know what it is. Let's just listen. And here we go again. Okay, so this is the minuet, menuetto, writes Mozart, which usually takes us to this graceful reminiscence of a court dance in 3 teeny weeny steps, and everybody wearing beautiful clothing. And here, I don't know about you, but I'm really hearing more of a braying donkey than anything else. What's also really fascinating is that Mozart is dressing his melodies in very asymmetrical structure. So we usually have a 4+4 measures to reflect that beautiful symmetry, of these perfectly groomed gardens of the 18th century. Well, here, even if you just start counting the bars, things don't quite add up. So do enjoy, again, the lack of stability, both in the lack of symmetry, but also this really weird melody that really seems to be mocking something. And I think in this movement, Mozart is really at his best paying homage to Joseph Haydn. Haydn was very well known for his incredible sense of humor, for his smarts, in which he used to start shifting the power dynamic between him, the lowly composer, and we must remember the composers of the time were on the same payroll as people who served dinner and butlers and so on. Haydn was the first composer who started challenging that, and he did that with his music. So I think Mozart here is really paying tribute to what Haydn is teaching him, not only about music, but also about the role of a composer in society. Now, final movement, I'm going to go to my timing here, 3107, just a couple of seconds of it. I want you to hear. It does sound a little bit like a child's play here. Talk about symmetry, we find it actually here, but again, not that much to hum on the way back home. And you hear a little bit of that innocence, childlike innocence, interweaved with a teasing motif, later turning very boisterous. So let's take a good listen. One more time, sorry. And again, in these kinds of forms, you're often going to hear the material twice for the same reason I just mentioned, in order to familiarize yourself with the material. So yes, you have these little snippets of motifs, but nothing really that hummable. Even when you get to that forte material, when things get very busy, how could you possibly sing it? By now, it's too fast to even come home singing it to yourself. Let's just hear the second iteration one more time. And again, I want to draw your attention to this knocking motif. You see it and hear it kind of everywhere. So if you choose to pick, one element of what we're talking about today, that is actually a really fun one. And it shows you the so-called cyclical nature of the piece, meaning that a composer is using the same idea throughout the piece. In this case, we have a 4-movement quartet, right? So 4 distinct chapters in this book, so to say. And yet that knocking theme must have been something that Mozart really liked, because he kept using it in a different context, but in every single movement. Okay, we always have too little time to discuss everything, so I'm going to move right along to the string quartet of Maurice Ravel. Here is the man at the piano himself. So He was a pianist, and the Franck, César Franck, who we will discuss last, was also a pianist, but was mostly known for his organ improvisation. So here we are still in the string quartet setting. We are not yet hearing the piano. Once the piano joins the string quartet, the whole name changes to a piano quintet. So that's how powerful the instrument is. I want to start with here again the first movement of the string quartet. Same structure. It's interesting because this is a piece written already in the 20th century, 1903. So Ravel is about 28 years old. And what's so interesting is that he's choosing to use the same structure that Mozart and Haydn used a century later, a century and a half earlier in their quartets. So the innovation will come through different means, and I'll tell you all about it. So Ravel is at this moment done with his training at the Paris Conservatory. He has been there since his teenage years, and his ambition has always been to win the coveted Prix de Rome. Well, unfortunately, it was not meant to be. He always came second, and this quartet was one of his submissions, and he had great hopes associated with it. However, he never really got to the top. I think the history really helped him out here, because we know this piece today as one of his greatest works, and it is performed internationally, and I don't think there's ever a season that does not include the performance of this quartet. So you're in for a real treat. So like I said, a 4-movement structure. So we have 4 movements, and the first movement, guess what, is a sonata, and it's written in sonata form, meaning that the structure is going to be something that Mozart and Haydn and Beethoven would have easily recognized, right? We have that first theme, second theme, and the development where things stir up, and the recapitulation where the conflict is resolved. So what Ravel is doing completely differently, and I love that you'll be able to hear these pieces back to back, is the use of tone color. Sort of try to absorb as much as you can of that Mozart sound, these very clean lines, even though he's denying us a full melody in that E-flat quartet. But Ravel is going to do something completely different. He will make those violins shimmer. You will feel like you're in a different dimension. So without keeping you much longer, let me start the first movement and talk about a great tune. You are going to hear it right here. Remember it well, because Ravel is going to do the same thing that Mozart does and use a cyclical structure where the theme will reappear throughout all the movements of the piece, not just the opening. And now we are approaching that bridge section where things will start modulating. And at 154, we're going to approach the second theme, beautifully mysterious, but also extremely sensuous melody. 154. And again, something to really memorize, because it will keep reappearing. So do you hear how beautifully the inner voices were shimmering while the first violin and the cello were playing the melody together, only then to be overtaken by the second violin? It's again, like I said before, such a pleasure, both sonically and visually, to see how these melodies are passed down between the musicians. And sure enough, if you really want to keep Ravel to that standard, 425 is where we come back to the main material, and that's the recapitulation. So we have now lived through the storm of the development, and let's listen to what happens now. And just to prove to you that he really passed his exam from sonata form, here is the second theme. It is now in a home key. So literally, Ravel in 1903 is following the same template that Mozart did in 1780s. Okay, so all this to say that, you know, sometimes where you find the most creativity is under the restriction of these classical forms. Ravel could have chosen to do anything he wanted. We are now in the 20th century. The Rite of Spring will be created 10 years later, and but he decided to create his revolution differently, certainly not by exploding the musical structure in the form. And what's very moving is that this quartet Ravel dedicated to his teacher, Gabriel Fauré. Second movement, what a fun piece. It's very short, and you're going to hear a lot of what's called pizzicato technique, where the string players are plucking the strings with their fingers rather than using the bows. Of course, you hear a little bit of both here. What's also really delightful in the second movement is that ambiguity between meters. So you can count it. Well, I'll show you. Actually, let me here. You can count it 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? But then you also have 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. So you have 2 3-beat units going on at the same time. Ravel was a Basque composer, and this is very likely going to folk origins of this rhythmic and metric ambiguity. Let's just hear what it sounds like. Okay, so that's something I would love you to also listen for, is that it's those two different units of 3 that Ravel includes. We probably won't have time for the third movement, but let me jump to the fourth, and here is my timing, 24:34. So this is what the movement starts like. And then I'm going to move to 24:34 to show you something. Here we also have, you could say, polyrhythm, right? We have the divisions of between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 2. So on the part of the players, it requires tremendous attention and precision to be able to, in real time, subdivide the 5 into the groups where you can have seamlessly going quintuplets against a duple meter. Now, 2434 I promised, and this is a wonderful example of how cyclical structure works. Let's just listen. This melody in the first violin, and again, you don't need to be able to read music to appreciate it, is something that you heard at the very beginning of the piece. That's why it's so rewarding to memorize the melodies well before you go to the concert. That's why we're here. Here, he keeps reworking that material, now changing it into this really delightful waltz. Let's listen to the first violin. And if I were to go to the very beginning, you will hear that very tune. And that's where I must leave this wonderful piece because otherwise we'll run out of time. But so you see there's a ton happening. You are not responsible for keeping track of all of these elements. I'm just throwing a bunch of ideas at you so you can kind of choose what you want to listen for, whether it's, these little motifs or trying to find that same tune in every single movement, because it will reappear in different guise. Okay, now we are moving on to the piano quintet. And as I said, the piano has such a powerful role in this ensemble that the entire name changes. So a piano quintet doesn't mean that you have 5 pianos in the room, but rather a piano plus a string quintet. César Franck was a romantic composer, pianist, and organist. I think organist more than really anything, and a music teacher as well. One of his first occupations after he finished his training was to work at the church, really, as part of the services, but also improvising on the organ. And I think it was that improvisation and what he has learned through it really guided him as a composer. You're going to hear very different style now. And I think really it is so informed by his probably never-ending improvisations at the organ. I would have loved to be able to hear that. The piece is also going to be cyclical. This one is in only 3 movements, but sure enough, you're going to hear that same structure in the first opening movement of the sonata form. Here it will be a little harder to find. The work is ultra expressive and it's constantly undulating and modulating, changing keys. The legend is that Franck was madly in love with one of his students at the time, and he wrote this piece that was just completely torn between extremes, and both in dynamics, so the loudness or the softness, the tempos, the sort of the moods, the character going from light to darkness, really on a dime. And this is something that I will definitely want to ask Milana about, how one negotiates all these ups and downs all the time in the tremendous work that this quintet is. We also know that the wife of Franck really hated the piece, and she publicly announced that. So there might be some truth to the fact that he was actually really infatuated with someone else. Let's listen to the beginning. And from the start, you hear this torn, so here he is at the organ, the man himself, pulling stops, as you see. 442 will be the second theme. Okay, you are hearing here this introduction. We're not yet in the first theme. The strings are starting, from maximum energy. There is no warming up into this piece. You will hear the heart is already on his palm. Okay, say no more. There is no possibility for greater drama already from the very start. And he does right fortissimo, so it's as loud as possible, and drammatico. That really says so much. And then the piano comes in with completely different story. And I want you to listen to how the simple tune transforms under Franck's fingers. And it sounds completely different each time you hear that descending third because of the modulations, the harmonic changes. And that's going to be something that will happen throughout this monumental piece. As you see here, is over 36 minutes long. And the strings, as though they wanted nothing to do with what the piano just said, come right back with this heightened sense of drama. So get ready for true emotional roller coasters and the colorful harmonies and countless changes of keys. You will feel like you are in the deepest ocean, really seeing and hearing these kaleidoscopic changes with no end in sight. It's a very interesting journey to allow oneself go on. Very quickly, what should I of course I don't have time now for everything. Oh yes, let me show you a little bit of the second movement. Actually, yes, I want to 2135. 2135 is something I want to share with you. Yes. For those of you who are familiar with Wagner's Tristan and Isolde, the opera about the two lovers whose story proceeds and is very similar to that of Romeo and Juliet, will recognize some of these chromatic motifs. Let's just listen to it for a second. Just keep that in your ear. That's actually, that timestamp actually is more to prove that Franck is using in his second movement material from the first. So again, a very tightly knit structure. But what I wanted to get to is actually here. Here is Leonard Bernstein, who you have just probably, I wonder how many of you have seen Maestro. I haven't yet, but I want to play you a few seconds of that overture, one could say, a Vorspiel to Tristan und Isolde. So you will hear these chromatic lines, very tight, full of yearning, also these very dramatic pauses that you will find in Franck's music. So Franck is aware of this piece. He has heard it 4 years before, and it's probably still playing in his head. Let's just listen. Okay, I planned to play much more of it, but because we have to rush, and I do want to ask Milana a couple of questions, I will stop right here. Anyway, all of these videos are available on YouTube. I will just add one last thing, that the piece was premiered by Camille Saint-Saëns, who was himself very accomplished pianist and composer, and he hated it so much. He thought it was just overblown with emotion, that just this romanticism was just getting to him too much, that after the premiere, he just left the stage, never came back, and was not interested in the thunderous applause of the audience, nor in the fact that Franck came after the concert and offered him the score, the autographed score to the manuscript of the piece. He was so done with it. And so let me now finish hearing myself talk and hear some more from Milana about your preparation for this piece, and how much emotion is written in, and how do you negotiate all that, not only on the piano but with the members of the quartet?
Well, I actually wonder if Saint-Saëns just left the stage because he was so emotionally burnt out, because it's a very emotionally charged, as you mentioned, piece. And the preparation is interesting. I have never played this piece before, and so this is my first time tackling this incredible work. And you mentioned, Franck being an organist, and you definitely feel that in his writing, the way he writes for piano. Very often, this very large stretches, and kind of you have to keep the melody, but then you have so much underneath with all this accompanying figures that are quite challenging also, just physically, on the piano. I don't feel it's very easily pianistically in that sense. It's quite complex. But the emotional journey, that's going to be probably the toughest challenge, because yes, we will have to have a discussion, how do we build up the structure, right? So that we don't pour out our heart and soul right in the first bars, because it's a long journey, and it's going to be all over the map. So it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward. I've worked with Cameron, who is the violinist in the quartet, in the past. He was actually a Naples Philharmonic violinist in the past, and then a couple of years ago he moved away and he joined the quartet. So he is now on the road with the quartet. So I'm looking forward to reconnecting with him, and I've enjoyed playing some chamber music with him in the past, but I haven't met the other members, quartet members. So I'm looking forward to this opportunity, because it's going to be. And in chamber music, it's very often that, well, you've just recently played quintets as well, so it's, you meet very often in festival settings or in concert settings, new members, and you have to find a way to work together and agree or agree to disagree on certain things.
That's right. Yes, but then certainly, you know, recreating that emotion that exists within the piece, right? And you know, we're not madly in love all the time, so you know, and there you have, you know, your ticket sales to worry about, right? And your email campaign, and the kids at school waiting, you know, for their outreach program, and here you are, you know, coming out on stage with 4 people, only one of whom you know well, right? Recreating this unbelievable emotional storm. Yes, and I agree with you what you just said. Even physically playing music of Franck for the pianist is something where I always wondered I really could do with a third hand there, because it's just so wide and very difficult. And like you said, it comes from the fact that he was an organist and he was also playing with his feet. There are all these melodies in his head, all this emotion. That's, yes, it's in our age, the 21st century, you know, of the age of emojis, you know, can be a bit overwhelming, in fact. So, you know, I wish you all the best. I only wish I could be there to hear you guys. I'm sure it's going to be a very memorable performance.
Thank you, Magdalena. And to tell our audience, I did hear from the quartet that they will be skipping the repetitions in the Mozart sake of time.
The goodness that you're here now, that this way you already know the music before coming in.
Right. So all of you listen to the quartet, Mozart quartet, ahead of time, so that you don't need a repeat in the performance. And if any of you have any questions, now is the time. We have only a few days left before 2023, before we sign off for 2023. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask them. Would love to hear from you. I will change my view so that I can see everyone participating.
I will also make sure to send you links of the performances that I shared today. So this way you can keep playing it as you're preparing for the concert itself.
Right, that would be very helpful, and we can add them in, and all of you can listen to the performances online ahead of time. And it's going to be interesting. I'm really looking forward to January 18. And I just hope I don't have any, you know, issues with box office right before, so I can focus on the performance.
And everybody, please protect Milana from her fan club after the concert, because you will know that it's a very emotionally draining piece. So she will need all your protection afterwards.
Well, if nobody has any questions, I wish you all a very, very happy New Year. It's right around the corner, and I'm super grateful for everybody's support, for, you know, joining us online and in live performances. Thank you for spreading the word. Magdalena, thank you so much for wonderful lectures, as always. Today we dug into some form analysis, which is really great. You know, it's nice to be able to kind of give this opportunity for our listeners also to understand in more depth, let's say, what it is that we're listening to, and to also show how incredibly complex all of the writing and performances are. It's quite remarkable. And don't forget, January 18 at 7:30 p.m. live concert at St. Leo in Bonita Springs. I'd love to see you all at the concert, and please tell all your friends, and I look forward to welcoming you whenever in 2024. Thank you.
Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you.
Happy New Year.